In this video, we're going to be looking at solving quadratics by factoring. To do so, the first thing we need to look at is the zero product property. The zero product property says that if A times B equals 0, then one of three things are true. 1, A equals 0, or 2, B equals 0, or 3, A and B equals 0. So let's look at an example of this to see how this can help us in solving quadratics. We have x plus 1 times x plus 5 equals 0. So by the zero product property, either x plus 1 equals 0 or x plus 5 equals 0, or they both equal 0. So we set them each equal to 0 and we solve. So x plus 1 equals 0, we subtract 1, and we get x equals negative 1. With x plus 5 equals 0, we subtract 5, and we get x equals negative 5. So our solutions are x equals negative 1 or x equals negative 5. Next, let's take a look as to how to actually factor quadratics. The first thing is we need it in standard form. So we need it to be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. It absolutely has to have 0 on one side, or we can't use the zero product property. Next, we need to find our factors of a times c. And then next, we look at which factors of a times c add to be b. So let's look at a couple of examples to see how this works. In our first example, we have x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, so we're set equal to 0, which was our initial condition. You have to be equal to 0. So let's identify our a, b, and c. A is equal to 1, b is equal to 1, and c is equal to negative 6. So let's look at our factors of a times c. So a times c is 1 times negative 6, which is negative 6. So what are our factors of negative 6? We have negative 1 times 6. We have negative 6 times 1, negative 2 times 3, and negative 3 times 2. So if we add negative 1 and 6, we get 5. If we add negative 6 and 1, we get negative 5. If we add negative 2 and 3, we get 1. And if we add negative 3 and 2, we get negative 1. Our b is 1, so these are what we're looking for. So when we factor our quadratic, it's going to be x minus 2 times x plus 3 equals 0. Now we use our zero product property and set each of these equal to 0. And solve. So we get x equals 2 or x equals negative 3. We can plug these into our original quadratic and it should come down to 0 equals 0, and that tells you that you have the right solutions. In our next example, we have 2x squared plus 10x minus 11 equals 1. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of this equals 1 by subtracting 1 from each side. So we'll have 2x squared plus 10x minus 12 equals 0. Now we can start factoring. So a times c is equal to 2 times negative 12, which gives us negative 24. So let's look at our factors of negative 24. We could have 1 and negative 24. We could have 24 and negative 1. We could have 2 and negative 12. We could have 12 and negative 2. We could have 6 and negative 4. And we can have 4 and negative 6. So let's see if any of those add to be b. So first we get negative 23, and then we get positive 23. Then we get negative 10, and there's our positive 10. So this is what we're looking for. So we get x plus 12 times x minus 2 equals 0. So we have, by our zero product property, x plus 12 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. So we solve each of these. So we get x equals negative 12, or x equals 2.